Hello everyone, Jester Geo here, and welcome back to Brewing Thoughts. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about all the changes that will be coming out for the end of Season 36. I'm not gonna lie, as of writing this video, I am dreading actually working on this video. The reason I am saying this is because there is so much stuff that is coming in this update, that I feel that actually explaining it will be a nightmare. There's the balance changes I just mentioned, which extends to over 20 characters, which is just insane on its own. There's also the new map balance changes that they did to some of the maps in the game, which is also just insane in its own way. And, last but not least, there's the Peddler, who won't be in the test server until the 14th of April. With that being said, her trailer did come out alongside the test server, which there are opinions on her. Suffice to say, actually writing this script sounds very daunting and I know it'll be a strain on my thumbs. Nevertheless, I'm going to try and talk about everything in the test server. Fortunately, the Peddler won't be in the test server for another few days, so I won't talk about her in this video. Her skills did get shown off and all, but I usually wait until the test server before making my videos. With that out of the way, let us begin the actual discussion. I'll start with the map changes, since those are the easiest ones to explain. The maps that are being changed are Arms Factory, Sacred Heart Hospital, Lakeside Village, Moonlit River Park, and Darkwoods. Starting with Arms Factory, the ruins area next to the factory gate was nerfed a bit. Simply put, there is now an opening between the window and the double pallet area, rather than it all being connected. Additionally, the junk next to that area was removed, saved for the locker that was left on the wall. This is both a buff and nerf for survivors in my opinion. While it is now easier to enter the double pallet area and you can still loop the two pallets well, there isn't much safety net anymore because of the lack of junk and walls. Additionally, this window is also far weaker now without the junk blocking ranged attacks, like Hook, and the wall making it impossible to chase or mind game. This is a very healthy change to this area, since this window and double pallet made chasing in these ruins extremely annoying. Combine that with the double window right next to it and it can eat up minutes of your time if the survivor knows how to kite it well. Moving on to the factory, the double pallet area outside of the factory also got a small nerf, with the junk being removed as well. This small portion of junk really helped with kiting, as it can potentially body block the hunter or block their hits. With it gone, the hunter should have no problem chasing survivors who try to loop on this side anymore. They're still gonna be fine if they loop via the double pallets, but it makes looping a singular one less viable. Moving on to Hospital, they really only changed one place in Hospital, that being the double pallet in the decrepit cottage. First, they made the wall entering the double pallet from the outside slightly smaller now. This means you have less cover to work with whenever you are trying to enter the kiting area. Next, they removed the little wall that can normally be seen on this wall of the double pallet area. This is a massive nerf to survivors kiting against certain hunters, like Gamekeeper and Ripper, as this wall could help shield them against their abilities. That small amount of shield can also help you make it to the pallet, as the hunter needs to go around the wall in order to catch you. With it removed, you are far more susceptible to hunter abilities, whether it is Hook, Rocket Dash, Wheel, or Weaver Spit. Finally, they remove some of the boxes and junk that can be seen next to the lamppost as shown. This makes looping this area much smoother while also making sure the hunter can't get stuck on it. Next is Lakeside, where they actually did a few survivor buffs to the map. First, they changed the beach cipher terrain, turning it from a low wall area to a high wall area. The pallets and chairs stay consistent with these high walls, meaning this'll give survivors a bit more to work with. Gamekeeper, Wax Artist, and Percy can be absolute menaces in these areas, so the high wall areas will help survivors have a fighting chance. They also changed the double pallet area that is between center field and small boat, adding a third pallet in the area. This turns this area into a triple pallet area, with a double pallet loop for survivors to work with. This will make this area a lot safer to play on, especially since it can help transition you into the small boat ruins. Finally, they added one pallet in the middle of Cornfield, which is meant to connect the small boat ruins to the Cornfield cipher or cottage. This pallet is pretty strong, but the cornfield itself was made thinner in order to compensate. This decreases the chance of the hunter losing survivors in the corn, allowing them to see them easily. Moving on to Moonlit, remember that random window area that is right next to the broken carousel. This window is actually really good if you have knee-jerk to rotate away and okay if you want to buy an extra second or two. Well, they decided to make this area into a full-blown kiting area, with them adding a wall and a pallet onto this window area. This makes this area a weaker cottage area, but it's still an extremely strong kiting area to kite around. The high walls protects you against those short wall menaces while the pallet allows you to kite for a decently long time. You can even save the pallet if you really want to, since the window is still perfect for those rotations if you have knee-jerk. It's an overall nerf to hunters, which the same can be said with the next change. For both the upstairs opening and the back door, they widen the entryways considerably. This is to prevent the hunter simply standing in the middle of the doorway and preventing survivors from entering that way. This also nerfs gamekeepers' trap placements, as you will now have room to walk around the traps. This was honestly a necessary change for the game, so I am very happy this finally got patched out. Finally, Darkwoods got a few changes made to the map itself, starting with the hunter's cottage. First, in true NetEase fashion, they replaced the god window next to the staircase with a god pallet. Similar to the hospital and factory changes of the past, replacing this window with a pallet will be a double-edged sword for the hunter. Yes, while it will make kiting in the cottage weaker, it gives survivors another way to enter the cottage. Plus, the god pallet is still really good, so it's an overall fair trade-off. The pallet on the staircase was also moved, being placed to the side of the staircase with a table next to it. This weakens the inside of cottage by a lot, but it's still decent. They added 2 different pallets onto the map as well, putting one next to one of the corner chairs and a whole new area next to the bonfire. Finally, they removed 3 chairs guaranteed to spawn next to the bonfire, replacing it with a singular chair. This also unintentionally removes the Dream Witch Easter egg from the game, where the followers will worship the flames if a survivor is eliminated on these chairs. That pretty much covers all the map changes they made to the game. Overall, I do think these changes are really good, some even being healthy for the game. I am a little puzzled with why they buffed Darkwoods for Survivor, but they're very minor, so who really cares? This will definitely shake up the game just a bit without it being overbearing, so good changes all around. With that out of the way, let's finally talk about the character changes being added into the game. For this video, I will talk about the changes based off the characters I care about. Don't take this as me shitting on certain characters, though, as the characters on the lower end just have changes I don't really care about. Additionally, characters higher on the list are probably characters I play a lot, so it makes sense that I have more to talk about with them. Even with this in mind, there's gonna be a lot we will need to talk about, so just get comfortable as I list off all the changes. To start off, let's go over the characters who didn't really get buffed or nerfed, but rather got some optimizations. First off is Krook, who I really have nothing to say about. They optimized her recording with elevations, making it easier to land recordings on now. What the hell am I supposed to say about this change? It's nice, don't get me wrong, being able to record easier will definitely help her cipher pressure. However, there really isn't anything else I can say about this change other than it's nice. In a similar vein, Lizard also got a change that is also not really worth talking about. His balloon attack duration has been extended, allowing his hitbox to linger a little bit. Again, it will be nice and could secure hits you couldn't originally, but that's really all I can say about that change. Finally, we have Seer, whose optimization is actually a very significant buff. Now, whenever Seer is spectating a survivor, there will be both an audio cue and a mark that appears on the target survivor. Both of these are not shown to the hunter, so you don't have to worry about the hunter knowing you're about to owl. This is something that should have been given to Seer a long time ago, but is good to finally be in the game. It allows teammates to know when the Seer is spectating the survivor, allowing them to go for more risky plays that will help extend the kite. It also allows you to better coordinate with your Seer player, which is especially helpful in solo queue. However, I think the most important thing about this change is the fact that it allows you to know if the seer is hoarding the owl for himself or not. There will be matches where the seer player never uses owl in the match and will only save owl for themselves. However, sometimes this might not be the case and sometimes our skill issue makes us die before he can send the owl. This change will help verify whether the seer is a team player or not, which isn't really important but is worth keeping in mind. That's all for the optimizations. Other than the seer one, there isn't really much to comment on them. Because of that, they're easy to get out of the way first and leave the rest of the changes that have a bit more. Next are the minor buffs that were added into the game or changed we knew were coming ahead of time. This only relates to 2 characters, but it's still worth bringing up in my opinion. To start with the changes we knew of, we have both Gravekeeper and Embalmer. Embalmer got a very minor buff, such as optimizing Coffin's movement display and renaming Rebirth to Invincible. During Invincible, you are immune to absolutely everything in the game and, when it runs out, you gain a speed boost for 1 second. It's honestly really funny because they literally buffed Ivy to where corruption affected Embalmer during Rebirth and now it's gone. With that being said, this was a much needed buff towards Embalmer, especially with Warp in the game. While Embalmer was a TIE survivor, he struggled a lot against both Warp and certain hunters stunning him. This made it impossible for him to rebound and wasted Coffin. While these changes won't stop that from happening, it will increase Embalmer's survivability by a fair bit, so this is a good change. As for Gravekeeper, they made it so if your shovel entering animation gets cancelled at any time, you will only lose 10 seconds of your shovel now. This was something NetEase told us the buff would be, as they got numerous requests about it. It's often annoying to lose your shovel for using it at the wrong time, especially since Weeping Clown keeps his rocket when interrupted. Because of that, this buff will help Gravekeeper tremendously, even if I am not necessarily a fan of it. With those covered, let's talk about the new stuff, starting with Mechanic. Mechanic got a slight cowardly nerf, with her debuff going from 25% to 30% decoding for every survivor injured or downed. I'm honestly surprised they went with this to nerf rather than the bot, but I definitely see why they didn't target bot. Bot is basically the only thing that makes her viable and losing it turns her into the worst survivor in the game. Because of that, targeting this trait is the right call, as it still hurts her without flat out killing her. Next is Balloon, who got a few stat buffs to his kit. Simply put, his speed burst cooldown is reduced to 14 seconds, spike timer reduced to 4 seconds, overall speed increased by 20%, and mode swapping was reduced to 5 seconds. They're good stat increases and in the right place, especially the spike timer buff. It basically means the time you need to wait after spiking a survivor is shorter, allowing you to place more spikes faster. This might be enough to bump him a bit higher in the meta, but we'll have to see. Cowboy also got a buff, which I feel only happened due to the recent hunter developments. Basically, if he lassos the hunter while they are vaulting a window, he will be able to fly over them again. Currently, if Cowboy tries to do this, he will just get stuck on the window and won't fly over. This was a mechanic that he had in the past, but it was removed at some point. The most infamous example is the Big Boat, where back then, you could lasso the hunter while they vault the window to get onto Big Boat. I think, with the inclusion of Warp and hunters like Hullabaloo, NetEase felt it was okay to add it back in. This'll definitely improve Cowboy on a ton of maps and against a ton of hunters. Not much else to say, pretty decent buff. Next is Mind's Eye, who got a pretty decent set of buffs. First, the cane cooldown is decreased down to 45 seconds, which is a very small buff if you ask me. Next, whenever the hunter is affected by the Mind's Eye cane, they will be unable to see survivor highlights. This includes highlights from Wanted Order, Peepers, AnCats, Mirror, Nostalgia, etc. Honestly, I feel like this change will be very good into certain hunter or against certain traits. Highlights are a major part of certain hunters and removing them can make playing them difficult. This can give a teammate the opportunity to kite for longer or lose the hunter. This also just helps Mind's Eye in general, so I believe this is a good ability. Finally, they decreased her vaulting debuff to 15%, meaning muscle memory now negates it. These changes will not make Mind's Eye meta by any stretch of imagination. However, this will definitely help Mind's Eye a lot, both for herself and her teammates being chased. Next is Wu Chong, who has a good buff on top of some really confusing adjustments. The first adjustment, I'm gonna be real, I have absolutely zero clue what the buff even means. As of writing this, the English patch notes are not out yet, so I don't know what exactly this part means. However, if I were to guess, it is trying to say if a survivor gets hit by Bell, they can't override the animation by swapping motions. For those who don't know, anytime a survivor is hit by Bell, they trip for 1 second and a calibration appears. Missing the calibration causes the survivor to be put in an animation, in which case they cannot act. I'm guessing if a survivor swaps from running to walking during this, you can override the animation and can act normally. I'm guessing this change stops this from happening, but I could be wrong. Next, they shorten Blackguard's belling animation, making it so Wu Chong can act faster now. They also decrease the cooldown of Wavering Soul from 15 seconds to 14 seconds. The debuffs survivors gain when standing under Infinite Nirvana also got buffed, going up to 8 seconds. Finally, both Black and White Guard got attack range buffs to their kits. White Guard's normal attack is now 3.15 meters, while Black Guard's normal hit is now 3.06 meters and heavy attack being 3.2 meters. In my opinion, the attack range buffs is probably the biggest buff that Wu Chong has gotten from this patch. They will make hitting survivors a lot easier, especially for Blackguard who needed it. Overall, not much else to say about the changes other than they're good. Entomologist is up next with a few decent changes to soften losing her bees. First, the cooldown for your swarm dispersing has been decreased from 20 seconds to 15 seconds. This allows Entomologist to use her bees again a bit faster after recalling or losing her bees. Next, they decreased the amount of bees you lose from attacks from 40% to 35%. This grants you a bit more bees to work with, which can be game-changing during certain kites. It also means you will be able to support more even if the hunter kills your bees during that time. What will also improve said support is the fact that Ento's bees are now highlighted to teammates now. This will help guide your teammates towards the bees, which can help your support even more. I'll be honest, I didn't really care about Ento or her kit when looking at these changes. However, Ento got a very sizable buff to both her containment and her support, which I think were necessary. Speaking of much needed buffs, Violetta got some really good minor buffs. That web optimization thing they leaked a while back has finally been implemented. Now, Violetta cobweb placements has been optimized to reduce the chances of webs being inside the walls. Seeing as how this can ruin Violetta's pressure, this is an amazing adjustment to make. Not only that, but they extended the hit detection of webs, both vertically and horizontally. This will help Violetta players get the speed boost from certain webs inside of walls and just get the speed boost in general. It'll also make avoiding the webs a bit harder for survivors, so it's a good change all around. Finally, at Final Presence, Violetta's web generation will go from 1.2 webs per second to 1.4 webs per second. This is a godly change, as one of Violetta's biggest weakness is her web generation. Due to how slow it is, you have to be very sparing with how you use your webs. You can lose webs very quickly, which will cause you to struggle later in the match. With this change, you will have a lot more wiggle room to use your webs far more often. And, seeing how Violetta is already a good hunter, this change could make her a potential meta pick. However, I won't hold my breath on that, we will have to wait and see. Speaking of meta, our recent tourney hunter, Smiley Face, got some pretty game-changing buffs himself. The first change they did was optimize his dash logic when it comes to bumping into obstacles. This already in itself is extremely good, as it lowers the chances of Smiley messing up a dash. Smiley can now take routes he couldn't possibly do before this buff, which will make Smiley a monster to face. Next, they adjusted the rocket part spawn so they aren't next to any complex obstacles. This just means the rocket parts will be in places that will make it far easier to pick up, like in the open. This change basically prevents Smiley from potentially crashing while collecting parts, which is really good. They added a new effect to Rocket Dash called Resistance, which does two things. First, if a survivor were to cancel Smiley's dash with their abilities, the rocket parts Smiley had equipped will be refunded to him. While he does still need to re-equip the parts, this change will be absolutely game-changing. One of the silver linings survivors had when playing against Smiley was the fact that he had limited parts. Because of that, using your abilities to cancel Smiley's dashes was essential to countering him. This change makes this not a viable option to counter Smiley, which will make Smiley even scarier to face. It also reduces the crash animation by 0.3 seconds and the successful animation by 0.2 seconds. This allows Smiley to get back into the chase much faster, which is a really good thing. This is especially good when crashing, since the recovery time for crashing can be very punishing. Finally, the time it takes to install rocket parts has been reduced, allowing you to put them on much faster. If I'm being honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the Smiley changes as a survivor main. I feel like Smiley is a very risky hunter to play with a lot of reward for playing him well. The risk being him losing those rocket parts if he faces a bad comp or isn't good at Smiley. By removing the ability aspect, you kinda remove a lot of the counterplay to Smiley face, which I'm not a fan of. Regardless, I'm not stupid and do think these changes were very necessary changes made to Smiley. If you get a turbo counter comp, it basically becomes impossible to have rocket parts for the end game, which can be extremely annoying. Because of that, I do think these are good changes that will really help Smiley out in the meta. Little Girl is up next, who actually got some of her past nerfs reverted back. First, her starting page charge will be 1.6 instead of 1.25. This is really good, as it allows Little Girl players to get their second pages much faster. Those pages can matter so much in chase, especially if you are first chase, so this buff will definitely help her early game. What will also help her chase is the fact that survivors can now interact with obstacles while being pushed by a page. Originally, you could only rescue during a page push, which helped Little's rescue out a bit. However, with this change, I think Little Girl got a massive kiting and support buff. It basically makes it easier for Little Girl to push the hunter away from you while you vault a window during a page push. Not only that, but this also means pages can be a good way to make distance to an obstacle and immediately interact. So, if you don't have enough time to reach a window, you can drop a page early, get pushed towards the window, and vault the window mid-push. It's a really versatile buff that will make Little Girl feel so much better to play as. To add on to this, the final buff they are giving Little Girl is making her page radius a lot bigger. When Little Girl released during time of reunion, her page area used to be really big before it was nerfed. From the looks of this change, it looks like they have reverted that nerf back, which will be a massive help. This creates far more distance between you and the hunter, while also making sure they can't potentially dodge it. This also helps your newest buffs, as you'll be granted more distance to work with via the page buff. You also move faster with this distance because the push time of the page remains the same, despite the distance. Overall, these are giant buffs that Little Girl got, which will be very game-changing into a lot of matchups. Patient is up next, who also got some well-needed changes to his kit. I guess to go over Patient briefly, he has sorta been falling off in the meta these recent seasons. This is because of his hook being too slow, allowing a lot of hunters to intervene on him. The worst offenders of this were Ivy, Goatman, and Hullabaloo, who made Patient completely useless when going against these hunters. On top of that, because Patient also has the ability to vault obstacles with hook, it made his hooks feel very inconsistent. You could have a hook lined up to gain distance, but accidentally get a vault instead, which can be costly. These changes fix these issues while also make it less annoying to kite with teammates. First, they made Patient's actual hooking animation much faster, allowing him to start gaining distance faster. This also means there is a shorter window in which the hunter can interrupt Patient's hook, which is good for him. Next, Patient will now go through survivors blocking his way of a hook. It was very annoying to get a hook off, only for it to be cancelled because a teammate was standing in your way. This change won't do a lot, but it'll definitely help when needed. Finally, they now added an option to disable vaulting whenever you use hook. This is a godsend, as you can now properly choose whether to use the wall kick or wall vault. This makes Patient's kite a lot more consistent and prevents him from ruining his kite due to wall vaults. These buffs are a godsend to Patient, as they will help him feel way more consistent to play and have a better chance in the meta. With Patient finally covered, it's now time we actually get into the changes I honestly care the most about. These are either characters I play as or insane changes being made to these characters. We should probably start off with the nerfed hunters first, starting with Hullabaloo. For starters, Hullabaloo got yet another movement speed nerf, with his speed going from 5.26 meters per second to 5.18 meters per second. This gives survivors a lot more wiggle room to work with whenever being chased by Hullabaloo and worsens his attack slowdown. It also means he won't be able to catch up to survivors as fast if you transition early, so this is a decent nerf. Next, they increased his normal attack duration to 0.43 seconds. He will still attack at the same time and speed, but his attacks will be longer. This is so his slowdown activates for longer, which can give survivors a small change to make it to obstacles. Double Surprise's cooldown has now been increased to 14 seconds, so Hullabaloo cannot spam as much clones as before. Finally, they decreased the Trapeze dash time to 0.8 seconds and reduced the charges from 3 to 2. This is a massive nerf, as it means Hullabaloo will not be able to bullshit his way into a hit as much. This also nerfs how much distance he needs to jump in the air with Trapeze in order to optimally use it. These changes will make the later points of the match much better to go against for survivors. Overall, while I don't know if these changes will be enough, these are some great nerfs done to Hullabaloo to balance him out. Goatman is up next with his own string of nerfs to him. First, his energy recovery speed for cages has been decreased yet again by 10% for all tiers. This will make needing to conserve your energy way more of a priority since you can't get back as much. It will give survivors a lot more wiggle room to kite, as Goatman will not be able to spam cages. It also, yet again, nerfs lock off strat, which I will always be happy about. What doesn't make me happy, however, is them nerfing backstep from 20 seconds to 24 seconds. Backstep is a really fun ability that I love using when playing Goatman, so it's sad seeing it nerfed. I understand why it needed to be nerfed, don't get me wrong, it's just sad to see it. They also extended the range in which survivors can immediately break cages when a survivor is on rocket chair. This is a massive nerf to Goatman's camp, making defending the chair a lot harder. Since the range of this immediate breaking is very forgiving, Goatman players can cage at the right distance to force survivors to break them at normal speed. This can get extremely obnoxious, especially if a teammate ends up dying because of that. This change will prevent those situations from happening, which is always really good. Finally, and the biggest change of all, they nerfed both of Goatman's normal and heavy attack ranges. This will be absolutely massive, as it gives you a bigger window to avoid Goatman's attacks while inside the cage. It's still a decent hitbox, so you shouldn't expect to juke it like a geisha hitbox. However, it is still a massive nerf to Goatman that'll make playing as him way harder. Overall, extremely good nerfs that heavily promote skilled play rather than just fumbling with your cages. God, we still have 7 more characters to go, pray for me. Another character who I feel got nerfed a bit with this patch, funnily enough, is Percy. The nerf is a bit more technical to explain, so I'll get into all of the buffs first. They increased his recovery speed whenever he lands from a jump chop, removing the stiffness of it. This allows you to go into attack recovery or move out of a jump chop much faster now. This is actually an incredible buff to jump chop, as it opens up a lot more possibilities with Percy. He can now properly use jump chop for mobility without worrying about being stuck in animation for too long. Additionally, it makes it so survivors have less time to act in the cases that Percy misses a jump chop on them. They also made energy conversion and kinetic dash hit startup animations a lot faster. This means, when kiting the dash, you will have way less time to react to the dash when he uses it. Additionally, it means he will be able to swap between 50 and 0 energy a lot faster now, which will help his chase. They also increased the charged strike speed by 20%. This means Percy will be able to slam the ground a lot faster sooner, allowing him to stun survivors a lot earlier. This also means he can charge the damage strike a lot quicker, which can be game-changing at certain areas. This gives charged strike a lot more versatility to it, which was something it desperately needed. Finally, they optimized his jump chop logic, making it far more consistent. This definitely helps the jump chop in certain situations, as there are times where it doesn't hit when it clearly should've. It also makes windows a threat to survivors now, as jump chop can now hit over windows. This makes it sound like it is a massive buff to jump chop and, in most cases, it is. However, with this change, a lot of Percy's jump spots also got removed because of this optimization. Case in point, a lot of high wall areas Percy could have jumped over right now will no longer be possible with this change. Additionally, pretty cool jumps, like jumps over coaster tracks, will also no longer be possible after this change. Because of that, I sorta see this change as a big nerf to Percy, as it removes a lot of the things he can do. I'm really torn on this, because while the optimized jump chop is good, I feel like these spots being removed also kinda ruins Percy. These changes will make Percy a lot more susceptible in high wall areas, which was already one of Percy's greatest weaknesses. It's really sad that Percy had to take such a massive hit in the same changes meant to buff him. Nevertheless, other than this, I'm very happy with all the changes that they made to Percy. Gamekeeper is up next with his buffs, which is more so nerf reverting, if you ask me. First, his attack backswing for missing normal and balloon attacks has been decreased by 0.3 seconds. This is a really minor buff that will help against skills, like flywheel or wand. They also reverted the nerf they gave to Gamekeeper's shockwave, increasing the range back by 20%. This will make landing the shockwave a lot more consistent again, allowing Gamekeeper to catch survivors easier. I'm honestly shocked they did buff the shockwave in this patch, but I'm not gonna complain. They're decent changes that will definitely help Gamekeeper's chase. Fool's Gold is up next, who is also a character I greatly underestimated with his changes. First, they finally added the cooldown of rock in the skill description. I don't know why this was omitted from the book this long, so it's good that people will be able to see it now. Additionally, Final Presence got a lot of meaty buffs, with the charge time being decreased to 1.25 seconds. They also buffed the cooldown, reducing it down to 16 seconds. This will make Fool's Gold's late to end game a lot scarier, as he can cycle his max presence a lot more often. However, I do think the biggest buff they gave to Fool's Gold was the optimizations to his dash. Now, Fool's Gold will go around obstacles that don't completely impede his dash towards his pickaxe. This means tiny obstacles, such as corners, trees, and rocks, won't cancel his dash early anymore. This actually opens up so many movement opportunities for Fool's Gold, especially on second story terrain. I saw a Fool's Gold use his pickaxe to quickly reach the top of the moonlit funhouse. This is not possible right now, as the staircase and walls make it impossible to scale it completely. If I'm being honest, I do genuinely think this is the biggest buff Fool's Gold has gotten and even helps get him out of the bottom 5. There's just so much doors that opened up to Fool's Gold with this one change, some of which can be game-changing. I honestly underrated this change so heavily, because I thought they just improved the logic of dash slightly. However, now seeing the changes, I think this was a massive win for Fool's Gold and definitely makes him a lot more viable now. Going on to a change I'm not really a fan of now, we have the bonbon changes that are being added. To get it out of the way, Remote Bomb got a small buff, reducing the cooldown to 30 seconds and the activation time by 0.4 seconds. This makes Remote Bomb a bit better to play with, so no complaints there. Now onto the big stuff, Bonbon now has a new trait added to his kit, called Explosion Only Seat. With this trait, Bonbon can place one of his time bombs onto the rocket chair, which will then go on a 25-second countdown. This will remove a bomb from your bomb supply, alongside any other bombs you decide to place onto it. Bonbon can place more bombs on the existing one, up to 5 bombs per cycle. These bombs can only be placed before the countdown reaches 10 seconds. Once the timer reaches 0, the bombs you've placed will explode and remove 4 seconds off the chair time for each bomb placed. At max, this means you can remove 20 seconds off of the survivor chair time, causing them to die much faster. Afterwards, you can once again place more bombs onto the rocket chair in case the survivor has a longer chair time. If the survivor is rescued during the countdown, the bombs will deactivate and do nothing. Now, I understand what they were going for when they made this change. They wanted to stop survivors from selling against Bonbon and force them to deal with his camp. Bonbon suffers against survivors selling a lot more than most hunters because of his lack of mobility. His camp is really the only thing he has, so it can be very punishing if the survivors ignore it. This change is meant to fix that, as Bonbon can kill a survivor fast and be back in the game if they sell. With that said, I'm really not a fan of this change, simply because it feels a bit too extreme for the survivor side. Problem or not, there is a good reason survivors sell against Bonbon, and it's because it's possibly the only way to consistently tie. Bonbon camp is extremely lethal, which makes getting stuffed a risk not worth taking. This is especially bad if the first chase ends early, since this'll give Bonbon a lot of momentum. Because of that, selling was necessary to even secure those ties, especially now with Warp in the game. This change completely removes that option from survivors, which will make it a lot harder to tie against Bonbon. It gives Bonbon more opportunity to snowball, especially if the rescuer comes too late. Combine that with Sadist and a teammate on chair can potentially die in 35 seconds, which is not enough time to do all the ciphers. I think this change is a little too overboard for Bonbon, and I hope they reconsider this change. At the very least, I hope they tweak it a bit to where it isn't as punishing for survivors to sell as it is now. Survivors still need options to work with, and removing said options will only be bad for the game. So yeah, not looking forward to this change, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Finally, we have the top 4 character changes that honestly got some massive changes. These changes are so big, this might actually bring these characters up in the meta. To start, let's talk about Explorer, who got some well-needed love. First, when Explorer is now small from book, he will no longer be targeted by Tentacles or Hullabaloo clones. They will instead target your closest teammate, which is an absolute game changer. It was extremely annoying to play as Explorer, only to be found because of these hunters. It was especially annoying against Hullabaloo, as it meant you were basically dead if he drops a clone to find you. These changes will make Explorer's hiding a lot stronger and discourages hunters from searching for him even more. Additionally, you can now use Book during a chase with Feaster to potentially counter his tentacles. Since they target the closest free-moving survivor, you can position yourself to force the tentacles to purposely miss you. It opens up a bit more opportunities in chase, so this is a godsend of a change. The next 2 changes, however, are even more insane in my opinion. Now, password pages will only spawn on ciphers 70 meters from Explorer's position. This means you will no longer need to travel the entire map in order to even collect a page. This is absolutely game-changing, as you can coordinate with your team to optimize page spawns. This means you can artificially summon your pages 20 meters away from you, which is absolutely busted. This change will make Explorer an extremely lethal cipher rush survivor and a big threat to the hunter. On top of that, whenever Explorer hits a perfect calibration now, he will gain 0.8% more decoding progress. This is absolutely disgusting, as this means Explorer can shred through a cipher quickly. Combine that with his debuff giving him 30% more calibrations and he can melt a cipher. People often forget this, but calibrations are the biggest way to cut down on a cipher machine's progress as a survivor. Because of that, giving Explorer this buff will actually make him the scariest decoder in the game. On top of that, he will be impossible to find now because of his detection buff, so chasing him isn't an option. We will have to wait and see if this change will make Explorer a menace to play against in the meta. However, this will definitely make him far scarier to face and make him more of a target for the hunter. Next is Magician, who also got a giant buff tied to his wand. First, they changed the description of his wand speed boost, which helps learn what it does. This is the only whatever change they did, everything else is nuts. Next, they made it so survivors who use wand can now interact with obstacles. This opens up so much more mind game opportunities with survivors using wand. This also potentially means you can avoid terror shocks via wand, which drastically increases its viability. They also removed the illusion collision for survivors, while keeping it for the hunter. This further increases the viability of wand, since it means survivors will no longer screw themselves out of a loop thanks to illusions. This makes it so the hunter is forced to break the illusions that are body blocking them. The final change they did was make it so Anne's cats and Alva's miracle orbs will be grabbed by the illusion. This makes wand an exceptional counter into both Alva and Anne, allowing survivors to kite longer against them. These are all general changes to wand that all the survivors will benefit from, which makes wand a worthwhile item now. Now on to actual magician buffs. His speed boost when using wand was further increased to 50%. This allows magician to gain more ground against the hunter and juke them a bit better than before. Additionally, if an illusion is hit by the hunter, magician will get his speed boost again. This can also extend his pre-existing speed boost, allowing him to get as much distance as knee-jerk. I've heard this change also happens if the illusion disappears itself, but I'm not sure. Nevertheless, this is an insane change that will make magician kite a lot more consistently against the hunter roster. Combine that with the general buffs to the wand and it makes magician a very lethal survivor to face. Overall, massive changes that were very much needed for magician, who will definitely be a survivor I will play often. Next, we get to my main, Lucky Guy, who honestly got a pretty insane set of buffs. Let's get this out of the way first. Fail wish syringes are now dead and can no longer be gotten. Now, you can only fail wish an item with a 50% chance to be gotten, so wand, syringe, and flashlight cannot be gotten. I've already posted about fail wish syringes on other places, so I won't really talk about that here. Plus, if we look at it objectively, this is a monumental change for Lucky Guy. This pretty much means Lucky Guy will almost always get a kiting item when he wishes, with the exception of controller. This helps his early game tremendously, as you are no longer a free chase for the hunter. Syringe was the one item that made Lucky Guy an easy target, so removing that will help him drastically. I'm still sad they removed syringes as a fail wish for even chests, but I think this was a much needed change. Additionally, the chest opening and closing animations are much faster now, allowing you to look for items faster. It also means, if the hunter goes for you, you are less likely to get terror shocked while closing a chest. They also increased his chest searching speed from 60% to 100%, which, thank God they finally did. I never understood why Lucky Guy had the biggest incentive to look for chests, yet he had a worse opening speed than Thief and Toy Merchant. These changes will make looking for items far more worth it and improve both his containment and support. Flashlight is now a 100% chance to be gotten from chests now, which increases its viability for Lucky Guy. Flashlight is an extremely underrated harassment tool to use, whether it be using it with flare or for canceling hunter animations. The stun of it can also impede hunters from catching your teammate, which can be absolutely game-changing. The only thing that sorta held Flashlight back was the fact that it was a chance to be gotten. Now that it's guaranteed, it is a worthwhile wish if you need to help buy your teammates more time. Finally, you will now receive 2 wands when you wish for it instead of just 1 wand. Combine that with the buffs made to wand and it makes it a far more versatile tool to have at your disposal. This can be used both in chase, for rescues, and to support teammates with body blocks, so getting more of it is nice. Not only that, but this means Lucky Guy can have up to 4 wands per match, which is insane if you ask me. Overall, while I was salty about Syringe, I am extremely excited for all of these Lucky Guy changes. These will give Lucky Guy a bit more needed consistency and it might be enough to bump him up in the meta. I'm not even joking, this might finally make Lucky Guy a B-tier survivor at least, which I am incredibly happy about. Last, but certainly not least, we have Ripper, who got the love he desperately needed. For those unaware, Ripper is widely considered to be one of the worst hunters in the game by far. His Fog Blade was a one-trick ability to use and can be costly if missed. It was very easy to deal with Ripper as a survivor, as he can't choose when he uses Fog Blade. Because of that, he is often shit on in the meta, even performing poorly in Koa when he was played. This is where the buffs come into play, which I believe fixes a lot of the issues Ripper has. Now, rather than Fog Blade being a cooldown-based ability, it is now a charge-based ability. Ripper can hold up to 2 charges, with each charge taking 9 seconds to recover. In addition to this, Ripper also gains a new ability button, which allows him to activate smaller fog blades. Normal fog blades can still be accessed when using the attack button, so you don't need to worry about that. However, charge attacks with both buttons will make it so Ripper will not use up fog blade when attacking. Going back to the mini fog blades, they are faster than normal fog blades, but will only deal chip damage. The attack Ripper does when sending the mini fog blade will also deal chip damage, so keep that in mind. These mini fog blades will consume 1 charge of fog, while normal ones will consume 2 charges. Finally, his final presence got a buff as well, with his cloak cooldown when in fog being reduced by 90% now. Now, if you look at these mini fog blades by themselves, it doesn't look that incredible on paper. However, when looking at it with his entire kit, it is a game-changing buff. It's a faster fog blade with a fog trail, faster recharge rate, doesn't waste the main fog blade, and can force survivors in bad positions. It's a fog blade you can use at any point of the game for mobility and still be able to have the big fog blade for later. If you manage to chip a survivor with it who isn't your main target, now they can't go in for rescues anymore because they got a chip hit. Unless there's a doc or a barmaid on the team, Ripper has 2 shots of getting the injury off with his mini fog blade. And, by proxy, he still has his big fog blade to either close the down off or use it on another teammate. Chip fog blades also helps preserve the main one a lot easier, since if they mess up, you can chip them and normal swing at them without wasting fog blade. With the new buffed final presence, you can be immediately on top of survivors who leave a fog trail because your invisibility cooldown is instant now. No joke, I was watching a Ripper chair a survivor and they were invisible during the chairing animation. Mini fog blades are also a great way to bait out flywheel, especially if behind a wall. Because they're so much faster, dodging a mini fog blade can be harder than a normal one. It's also good to bait out survivor items like Wander Perfume. I feel like, with this change, Ripper just has a lot more options to work with now, whereas right now, he really doesn't have any. You are also given the choice to not use fog blade at all via charged attacks, which is an actual lifesaver. One of my biggest complaints with Ripper is the fact that survivors will run into Ripper to force the normal hit. This puts Ripper in attack recovery while also wasting his fog blade. This makes it so survivors cannot do that anymore, which is a godsend. Now, survivors will have to dodge the fog blade or use an ability to avoid it, which is far more interactive. If I am being honest, I feel like these changes are more than enough to turn Ripper from an F-tier hunter to AB tier 1. I don't want to jinx it just yet, because we will have to wait and see for ourselves. However, just by what I've seen, I am happy to say that Ripper is no longer a bottom 5 hunter anymore. With that said, that should cover every single change that was added in this update. They really wanted to spice up the meta with these changes and it can clearly be shown. Even the more minor ones, like Mind's Eye or Embalmers, have some great utility towards them and will help their team out a lot. And, with Peddler and the new survivor pinging system also coming out to the game, it's fair to say that Identity V will be a much different game once everything is added into the game. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap this video up because Peddler's test server comes out soon and I need to get ready for it. Let me know what changes you are excited for in the comments. I will immediately get writing on the Peddler video when we see gameplay of her, so look forward to that. Until then, thank you so much for watching and I will see all of you next time.